Peyton Manning will join the University of Tennessee as a professor. Peyton Manning has been very involved with Tennessee lately. He has gone to the College World Series. He's been around. Peyton Manning has a platform that Bob Suffrage or all those guys back in the day would have never had, even if they wanted it, because he made so much cash. He's able to go to ESPN and he has leverage to do the Manning cast and other projects like that. He's doing the QB1, right? Or quarterback, or what's that thing called? There's something that pops up on Netflix that I believe is an Omaha Productions thing. But at the end of the day, he's churning out a lot of content, and that's what he wanted to do. And good for him. I mean, I think that's pretty impressive. That's a lot to tackle when you're just a football player. I say just a football player with air quotes. It would have been a lot easier for Peyton Manning to sit in a booth or sit in a studio, to even potentially be a small, non-vocal minority owner or front office exec in the NFL. He could have done those things, but he started a new business. So I got, Caleb and I, particularly with what we're doing, have major kudos for Peyton Manning. Is he the greatest ambassador in Tennessee athletics history? I don't even know who's second, to be real honest.
Well, I think in his prime, I thought Johnny Majors was a pretty darn good ambassador for Tennessee, largely because Johnny Majors left a national championship program at Pitt to go rebuild Tennessee when it was in the dumps, where he was a Heisman runner-up as a player in 1956. So, I mean, I think leaving Pitt for Tennessee, like Johnny Majors did, I know that sounds crazy now. Like, obviously, you would leave Pitt for Tennessee now, but doing it in 1976, after you just won a national title and coached a Heisman Trophy winner, and you knew the state Tennessee was in, to go back to your alma mater and do that, I can't look past that. Now, the thing is with Peyton, there's another thing I can't look past, Dave, with Peyton. Peyton, like the way I use my tone there, sorry. But there's another thing I can't look past, which is that Dave Peyton was working with the Haslams to try to push through the Schiano hire in 2017 because he was trying to get a connection to be an NFL owner. And I have a lot of respect for him overall as a person, but that was a really, really black mark on Manning's legacy to me with Tennessee, because he was willing to force a bad hire on Tennessee so he could get in with the NFL owners and with the Haslams.
Fair. Nobody's perfect, though. And the fact that Peyton Manning is a household name in the world of football. I mean, you could go to Las Vegas and talk to a Raiders fan and say, have you ever heard of Peyton Manning? They're be like, yeah, he's on the Manning cast. Didn't he play for the Colts before he won a Super Bowl with the Broncos? I'm doing like the impression of somebody that's like mid-30s, I guess. But
I'm mid-30s. Like everybody, okay, we all know Peyton from this time. It has to be someone in their teens.
Okay, they're teens or 20s. But Caleb, you're a little bit more learned than a lot of the people out there. Some guy stumbling around Vegas. That's why I picked that down. So I would, I don't even think it's close. You know who I think is close or would be second? I don't think there's anybody that's close. Would be second is probably Candace Parker, because of the platform she has in women's and men's basketball. And then another one, God rest her soul, would have been Pat Summitt. She would have retired from coaching and been a huge ambassador for Tennessee's football program. And the thing about Pat Summitt that you kind of alluded to with Manning, and that we all know that Phillip Fulmer was a little bit self-serving. He loved the university, but Pat Summitt was so selfless to the university. I really, from the times I was around her, I never got the feeling that it was even close to being as much about her as it was about the University of Tennessee. I don't know that we can say that for the other people we mentioned, Majors, Manning, Fulmer. I think it's
true.
I think it's as much about them as it is about Tennessee, right?
Oh, absolutely. And for Pat Summitt, it wasn't just about even the university. It was about women's basketball as a whole. I mean, let's be honest. Pat Summitt, I know they entertained it. If she wanted to, she probably could have been the first female coach in history coaching men's basketball. And that would have been a huge statement.
No question.
She decided, no, I'd rather take this, let's call it what it is, lesser role to build women's basketball to where it is now. That was so selfless of her. You're right. And so that's the thing. It's like, is she an ambassador just for Tennessee at that point, or is she an ambassador for women's basketball? And so that's where it goes.
Boy, rough shot by Hoghead, who said if Fulmer had been selfless, he would have stepped down after 2022. Woo!
2002.
Or 2002. That would have been a little early. He was almost in the national after 2002, but he was almost in the national championship game after 2001. That sounds a little strong. Back to Peyton Manning. Do you feel like the core Tennessee fans are always going to remember the record against Florida, which is winless? But do you feel like that's primarily been forgotten because of the 2 Super Bowls and what he's done? Is that black mark maybe not erased, but maybe half whiteout, if you're old enough to remember whiteout? Is it at that point, is the Florida stuff completely forgotten?
There's never a black mark on his resume to me. I mean, he put up 36 points in 2019. It's not his fault John Chavis allowed 62 points. I'm not putting that on Peyton Manning. And it's not his fault. In 1997, the coaches wouldn't start Jamal Lewis, and the offensive line had the worst game I've ever seen for an offensive line. I mean, Peyton Manning still did win an SEC championship at Tennessee. And remember this, too. The black mark at Florida, that you might want to say black mark, is wiped out by the fact that Manning turned, no pun intended, he turned the tide in the series against Alabama for that time.
Fair.
And that was a big, I mean, that 1995 Alabama game, and Peyton Manning, it wasn't just Peyton Manning was beating Alabama. No, Peyton Manning was torching Alabama. Like, he was dominating them as a quarterback. I think that if you asked Alabama fans, the 2 quarterbacks that gave them the most hell were Peyton Manning for 3 years and Cam Newton for that 1 year.
And we're doing the Celebrate 98 series, and I believe we have the new one. We did a Celebrate 98 series with Hall of Fame where we cited some guys in terms of the toughest, most important. So we want to check that out. I think that's up. Is that up with Fred White yet? Do we have that up?
It's going up today.
Today. Okay, so the Celebrate 98 series, and I wonder if winning the championship at 98 cast a small blemish on Peyton Manning's legacy. Just because they couldn't do it without, or they couldn't do it with him, but they could do it without him. Make sense?
Do you think there's a blemish on Tom Brady's legacy that Michigan won the national title the year before he became the starter?
Well, that's different. The year after is a little bit different.
I mean, yeah, but I think it's still kind of the same concept. I think that college football is in college basketball, these are such like random sports where there's so many. There's so much attrition in college sports that it's not really the same team. I mean, we talk about this all the time. That 97 recruiting class, if you look at NFL production, was Fulmer's best class, the 97 one. Well, They weren't really contributors on the 97 team. They were major contributors on the 98 team. So Deion Grant, Cedric Wilson, Travis Henry. I mean, these guys barely saw the field in 97. So it wasn't the same team, not just with Manning gone.
Yeah, it is not fair to say Peyton Manning didn't win a championship with a similar team in 97, maybe a better overall team when you start talking about Leonard Little and Terry Fair and those guys, and they did win it in 98. Maybe it's not fair because I think you had John Chavis not at his best. I think you had Steve Spurrier at his best. So it's not fair, but I still think a lot of people think, hey, you won it without him, no big deal, which sounds crazy. I know he's one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time and one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the history of the world. So I'm somewhere in between. I think with some people it cast a pall. I do. And Peyton Manning, I ask you this. Have we seen the last of Peyton Manning as a player? Everybody has to run now in the NFL. I don't know that Peyton Manning, he would have a home, but he would have been taught to run like his nephew Arch, who's very mobile. I don't know that we're going to see a pure pocket quarterback like Peyton Manning or Dan Marino ever again. I mean, how many do we have now?
I mean, Matthew Stafford did just win a Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Okay, right. But then I'm going with the numbers. So Stafford wins a Super Bowl. Who else is just a pure pocket passer?
Well, obviously, Will Levis is going to be an amazing pure pocket passer for the Titans, guys. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Trevor Lawrence, he's a pocket passer, isn't he? Would you say he runs?
Yeah, I think he can run. I think they're still trying to find him. I think they wanted to make sure and develop him as a passer last year, and there might be another step for him. When I saw him at camps, I thought he was incredibly athletic, surprisingly athletic. So yeah, but that's a fair one. Maybe that's the next one that lacks mobility, that lacks physical ability, that could actually be considered one of the great players in the NFL, despite being purely a pocket passer.